When Mario Krenn was a doctoral student in physics at the University of Vienna, he learned to design new experiments in a time-honoured way. He and his colleagues would gather before a blackboard and think. For months, they'd been trying to figure out how to observe a specific quantum state. A typical experiment would use a laser sent through a precise arrangement of lenses, crystals, and mirrors. The exact setup, though, was up to the physicists. Human reason, usually pretty clever, was failing them. No solution appeared. But late one night, Krenn was cooking up a different way to generate ideas. He'd read about an AI system that composed music like forgotten Baroque masters, an exercise its creators called computational creativity. The idea that creativity, often seen as this abstract, untouchable human thing, could actually be measured really got him thinking. If you could measure creativity, a computer could totally optimize it. So he decided to try this out in physics, creating new experimental recipes from basic lab stuff. He built a program to do it for him and called it Melvin. At their core, the advanced AI models that power systems like Melvin are a type of deep learning architecture. They do not understand in a human sense, but are masters of association, able to piece together information like a person solving a colossal jigsaw puzzle with billions of pieces. Krenn's goal was to point this pattern-matching ability at the building blocks of a physics experiment. One evening, Krenn fed his stubborn quantum problem to Melvin and let the program run. The next morning, it produced a proposal. He sent it to his advisor Anton Zeilinger, a future Nobel laureate, who replied almost immediately with his approval. Zeilinger noted the design was counterintuitive. It was asymmetric, whereas the quantum state they wanted to create was perfectly symmetric. Krenn realized why the human team had missed it. They were biased, their intuition shaped by years of experience and a preference for elegant, symmetrical solutions had become a blind spot. The machine, unburdened by such aesthetic predispositions, had simply explored the entire space of possibilities and found the answer hidden there. It took another 4 years to actually build and validate Melvin's experiment. But it worked. Krenn's colleagues thought it was useful, but kind of a one-off, and went back to their usual methods. Robert Fickler, a physics professor at Tampere University, said that while the tool was fast and helpful, he figured a human team could have eventually gotten to the same answer, even though they hadn't. But this sparked a question that is setting the foundations of a new kind of AI, an AI scientist. If a machine can avoid the mental roadblocks that even smart human minds get stuck in, what happens when we use that power on the really huge scientific questions? What happens when AI does not just answer questions, but poses new ones and designs methods to answer them? Melvin's creation 10 years ago kicked off something big. The idea of an artificial scientist has gone from a cool side project for physicists to a mainstream goal of AI race. Everyone's pouring tons of attention and money into this field. Just in 2024, private AI investment in the US hit a whopping $109 billion, with generative AI alone pulling in almost $34 billion worldwide. Recent advances show these systems are already producing tangible scientific results. At MIT, researchers developed a platform named CRESt, which stands for Co-Pilot for Real-World Experimental Scientists. This system incorporates information from scientific literature, chemical compositions, and images to design new materials. It then uses robotic equipment to run the experiments, feeding the results back into its models to refine its next hypotheses in a continuous loop. This process led to the discovery of a new catalyst material that delivered a record power density in a type of fuel cell. Another tool called SCIGEN steers generative models to create materials with specific geometric structures that give rise to exotic quantum properties, a task that has historically been extremely challenging. In one test, it generated over 10 million candidate materials, from which 2 entirely new magnetic compounds were successfully synthesized. The method is also accelerating discovery in medicine. A 2025 study showed that OpenAI's GPT-4 could generate novel hypotheses for synergistic drug combinations to treat breast cancer. When tested in a laboratory, several of the AI's suggestions were deemed effective. Isomorphic Labs, a spin-off of Google DeepMind, recently announced partnerships with pharmaceutical giants Eli Lilly and Novartis, potentially worth billions of dollars. Even established scientific instruments are getting an upgrade. Physicists are using AI to make LIGO, the gravitational wave detector, even better. The AI proposed an unconventional design with an extra loop of light that initially baffled researchers. But then months later, they figured out it was a brilliant way to use a noise reduction idea that had only ever been a theory before. This experience is not universal, however. Eliska Novotny, a researcher who studies protein folding, has pointed to a different outcome in his field. When the AI system AlphaFold effectively revolutionized the protein folding problem, a monumental challenge in structural biology, some worried it would make their skills obsolete. The value of an AI partner seems to hinge on whether its human collaborators can trust its reasoning. When the AI's output comes from a black box, the human becomes a technician. This really brings up arguably the biggest hurdle in creating an AI scientist: how to peer inside the black box of AI. AI's promise to overcome human cognitive limits is a bit of a mixed bag. Sure, a system like Melvin can avoid our human preference for symmetry, but other AI models can just as easily pick up and boost biases from the huge data sets they're trained on. Take, for example, an AI trained on old hiring data from a company that preferred male applicants. It might just learn to do the same thing. Or a medical AI trained mostly on data from one group might not do so well diagnosing patients from another. These systems aren't telling us objective truths. They're more like mirrors, showing us all the patterns, good and bad, from our human world. This problem is compounded by the fact that many of the most powerful AI models operate as black boxes. We can observe the data that goes in and the often brilliant results that come out, but the internal reasoning process remains opaque, even to the people who created them. This lack of transparency is a fundamental barrier to the use of AI in science. A discipline built on the principles of verification, reproducibility, and understanding the causal chain of why something happens. A correct answer from an untrustworthy source is of little use in a field that demands rigorous proof. So, a new field called Explainable AI, or XAI, has popped up to tackle this problem. The idea is to create systems that can show us how they make decisions, basically turning those mysterious black boxes into glass boxes. XAI uses different techniques to highlight which parts of the input data were most important for an AI's final prediction. For instance, it can point out which pixels in an image made an AI identify it as a cancerous cell, or which words in a patient's history led it to suggest a specific diagnosis. Not everyone's on board with the idea that AI scientists will be a totally good thing. Claudia Wagner, a professor at the Leibniz Institute for the Social Sciences who studies how science works, worries that AI might make science even less disruptive. If AI-driven metrics start influencing how research gets funded and what gets published, it could push people to play it safe and do incremental work rather than bold, game-changing ideas that are harder to measure. The pressure to churn out a ton of papers could get even more intense, making science feel less human and less diverse. Worries about the role of AI in science are leading to guidelines for using AI responsibly in research. The UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, for example, is a good starting point. More and more journals and research institutions are now adopting these principles, and they all really stress human responsibility. Basically, human authors are always on the hook for their whole work, no matter how much an AI contributed. You can't list an AI as an author, ever. Another guardrail is that humans absolutely need to be in charge. There's always a human in the loop for big decisions, from planning experiments to figuring out what the results actually mean. And finally, there's a big push for openness. If researchers use AI tools, they have to say so in the methods section of their published papers, which lets other researchers properly evaluate the work. This brings us back to Mario. He remains optimistic about the potential to create a scientific creativity machine, but also acknowledges the difficulty in imagining how such a system could produce the kind of fundamental conceptual leaps made by figures like Albert Einstein. An AI scientist won't be a single invention waiting just over the horizon. It's more about slowly bringing together super smart tools with our ongoing human drive to understand things. The biggest hurdle isn't techie stuff like processing power or algorithms. It's actually about us, humans, how we design these systems and our whole scientific culture so they boost our curiosity and creativity instead of making them smaller. The next part of our quest for knowledge will probably be a new kind of team-up, blending human gut feelings with the power of machine smarts.